Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to dive deep into the story of an ordinary young woman whose extraordinary willingness to act quietly yet decisively completely redirected the course of biblical history. We so often think God only advances his plans through these massive, spectacular, sky-splitting miracles. But as we'll see, he actually tends to move through faithful, everyday people making incredibly courageous decisions at the most critical, decisive moments of their lives.
Let's kick things off with a pretty provocative question. How much weight does one yes really carry? How can a single instance of radical obedience, all within a mere 24-hour window, reshape eternity and literally determine the destiny of nations? I know it sounds like a wild exaggeration, but by the end of this explainer, you are going to see exactly how a single day changed the world forever.
Section 1. An ordinary day, eternal stakes. To truly wrap our heads around this, picture the city of Nahor in Mesopotamia thousands of years ago. Imagine the amber sun setting over an ancient city. Well, its stones worn completely smooth by generations of hands. Right here, we meet Rebekah. She's effortlessly balancing a water jar on her shoulder, just going about her normal, everyday evening routine. She is completely unaware that at this exact second, the fate of the Messianic line hangs in the balance, and her incredibly ordinary life is on a direct collision course with divine destiny.
It's just fascinating to map out the sheer mathematical impossibility of this moment. Hundreds of miles away, the patriarch Abraham had sent his most trusted servant on this nearly impossible mission to find a wife for his son Isaac. God was actively working behind the scenes the entire time, guiding this servant to cross a vast, dangerous wilderness to this exact well. So the servant is standing there totally exhausted, and he prays for a very specific, highly unusual sign of extravagant generosity just to identify God's chosen woman.
Section 2. The test at the well. Literally before the servant even finishes whispering his prayer, Rebekah walks up, and this defining three-step encounter unfolds. First, the servant asks a total stranger for a little water. Now put yourself in her shoes. What would you do if a stranger asked for water after a long, exhausting day? You'd probably offer a quick drink and get out of there, right? But Rebekah quickly lowers her jar, gives him a drink, and then, completely unprompted, volunteers to draw water for all 10 of his camels.
Now we really need to pause on the logistics here. A thirsty camel can drink 20 to 30 gallons of water in one sitting. So watering 10 camels means hauling roughly 300 gallons of water by hand. Let that sink in. That takes a polite, everyday gesture and turns it into an act of staggering, back-breaking physical sacrifice. And the craziest part? She didn't stop to calculate the cost. She just started working. That right there is the very definition of extravagant generosity. It's a willingness to act decisively, way beyond mere obligation. And it functioned perfectly as the divine sign of her character. Stunned by this profound act, the servant realizes God has answered his prayer with pinpoint precision. Right there at the well, he showers her with heavy gold and silver jewelry and actually bows down to worship the God of Abraham right in front of her.
Section 3. The weight of one yes.
From here, the narrative just hits the gas. The servant enters Rebekah's home, explains this massive divine appointment to everyone, and then demands to leave for Canaan immediately, like the very next morning. But then we hit a very real clash of perspectives. The family, understandably, asks for a 10-day delay. Human nature wants preparation, certainty, a slow goodbye to process a huge, life-altering reality like this. But the servant recognizes God's urgent momentum and absolutely refuses to wait. Ultimately, the family decides not to force her either way, shifting the entire weight of the decision squarely onto Rebekah's shoulders.
And this brings us to the ultimate hinge of history. When her family calls her in and asks if she is willing to leave everything familiar, her home, her culture, her safety, for a man and a land she has literally never seen, she doesn't ask for 10 days to think about it. She responds with 2 decisive, history-altering words: I will go. That is instant, transformative faith in action.
And what's amazing is how this historical reality builds a massive theological framework, a real architecture of providence. Rebekah's journey beautifully mirrors the believer's journey. Think about it. Just as Abraham, who represents the Father, sends his servant, representing the Holy Spirit, to find a bride, Rebekah or the church, for his son, Isaac, we too are called to leave our comfort zones and trust the totally unseen workings of God.
Section 4. The cost of seeing clearly.
So Rebekah travels the harsh wilderness, marries Isaac, and brings deep, much-needed healing to a household that was still actively grieving the loss of Isaac's mother, Sarah. However, the promise of a great nation hits a massive roadblock. For 20 long years, Rebekah is barren. This agonizing delay is finally broken, not by human scheming, but by Isaac's direct prayer. God answers, yes, but her pregnancy is so violently turbulent, with the twins literally crushing against each other inside her, that Rebekah bypasses everyone and goes directly to inquire of the Lord to figure out what on earth is happening.
The answer she receives is staggering. God tells her, "Two nations are in your womb. The older shall serve the younger." This is a defining oracle. It grants Rebekah exclusive knowledge of the hidden structure of the future. It reveals, quite shockingly for the time, that God's covenant will actually bypass the firstborn, Esau, and rest completely upon the younger son, Jacob.
Now, as you can imagine, this oracle creates a growing, silent divide in the household. Isaac aligns with tradition and physical provision. He heavily favors the strong outdoorsman Esau. But Rebekah, she values the divine oracle. She's carrying this silent, heavy knowledge of God's true plan for Jacob, and it shapes how she sees everything.
Years later, when an aging, blind Isaac attempts to bypass God's prophecy and give that primary blessing to Esau anyway, Rebekah makes a decisive, bold intervention. Because she sees what others either don't see or refuse to see, she orchestrates a highly controversial, incredibly risky deception. She instructs Jacob to disguise himself to ensure he gets the blessing. She acts decisively to secure the future, forcing human strategy and divine purpose to intersect in a major way.
Which brings us to our final section, the Mother of the Covenant.
Now, Rebekah succeeds in securing the divine outcome, but we have to be real here. Acting on hidden truth rarely comes with a heavy price. The hidden weight of her action is genuinely heartbreaking. Esau's resulting anger totally fractures the household. To save Jacob's life, Rebekah is forced to send him away. She pays the devastating, tragic price of never seeing her beloved son again. She secured the future of the promise, absolutely, but it meant she lost her son in the present.
Still, when you zoom out, her legacy proves the massive historical impact of her instant obedience. On day one, she simply says, "I will go." 1 generation later, Jacob receives the blessing. 2 generations down the line, the 12 tribes of Israel are born. Fast forward 1,000 years, King David establishes the throne. And 2,000 years later, Jesus the Messiah is born. God advanced his entire covenant to save the world through this one ordinary woman's extraordinary, courageous decision.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative reflection. If one ordinary woman's immediate yes could literally echo through 4 millennia of human history, what divine trajectory might your decisive obedience set in motion today? When the moment requires transformative faith, are you going to wait around for all the answers and risk missing the moment entirely? Or will you, like Rebekah, just say, "I will go"? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating story with me today.